My brother convinced our grandparents I was dead for 3 years after our parents' accident, so he could keep my half of their $2.7 million estate. But when I showed up at his wedding, he tried to blame me, so I did this. So a little background. My parents died in a car accident about 3 years ago. I know, super fun way to start a post. At the time, I was basically traveling around Southeast Asia and had been for like 4 years. I was in Nepal when it happened, completely off-grid hiking in some pretty remote areas. I mean, really remote. Like no cell service, no Wi-Fi, nothing for weeks at a time, which I loved, but obviously caused some serious problems when shit hit the fan back home. Me and my parents weren't exactly on the best terms when I left. My dad especially thought I was wasting my potential by traveling instead of getting a real job like my brother Reed. Our last conversation actually ended with him telling me I was being childish and irresponsible, and me saying something like, "At least I'm living my life and not the one you planned for me," which, yeah, not great considering I never got to talk to him again. I still feel like shit about that. Reed and I used to be close when we were kids. He's 3 years older than me, but we kind of grew apart in our teens. He was always the responsible one. Good grades, business school, suit and tie type, while I was more interested in actually experiencing the world, I guess. He thought I was a directionless hippie. I thought he was a corporate sellout. Classic brother stuff. So anyway, my parents own this construction company in Minnesota where we grew up. Nothing fancy, just a solid family business. But then about 5 years ago, this huge developer wanted to expand into our area and offered them $2.7 million for the business, which was insane money for my family. We were always firmly middle class. They sold it about 8 months before they died, planning to retire early. Here's where everything went to shit. I was trekking in Nepal when the accident happened, and I didn't find out until almost 2 weeks later when I finally reached a town with internet. I immediately freaked out and tried emailing Reed, our grandparents. Marie and Johnny, they're in their 70s and super close with Reed. Literally anyone I could think of. I got a couple short responses at first. Reed sent a brief, "We're handling arrangements, let us know when you're coming home" type email. I told him I was trying to get back as soon as possible, but was having issues. And then my backpack with my passport, wallet, ID, and phone got stolen at this hostel in Kathmandu. I literally had nothing. So now I'm stuck in Nepal with no ID, trying to get emergency documents from the embassy, which was a complete nightmare. Everything took forever. Meanwhile, I'm trying to use internet cafes to contact my family, but the connection was so spotty, and eventually my temporary phone broke too, because of course it did. It took me almost 6 months to finally get back to the US. 6 months. By this point, I'd missed the funeral, missed the will reading, missed everything. I was devastated, but also just so relieved to finally be going home to be with family. So I get back to Minnesota and go straight to my grandparents' house. I knock on the door, all excited to see them, despite everything, and my grandmother opens it and literally screams. She backs away from the door, looking like she's seen a ghost. I'm like, "Grandma, it's me, Shane," and try to hug her, but she's terrified, calling for my grandfather. He comes running with a freaking baseball bat. He's 76 and starts yelling at me, demanding to know who I am and why I'm pretending to be their dead grandson. I was so confused. I kept saying, "What are you talking about? I'm Shane, your grandson." And my grandmother is shaking and says, "Our grandson Shane died in a hiking accident in Nepal 5 months ago. Reed told us. We had a funeral." Then my grandfather shows me this framed memorial program with my picture on it and dates of my life, like with an end date and everything. I'm literally staring at my own obituary while standing in front of them alive. My grandmother calls Reed in a panic while my grandfather is still pointing this bat at me, which was honestly kind of funny in retrospect. Like, what was this old man gonna do? I can hear Reed on speakerphone saying he'll handle this sick imposter and that they should call the police. I just left. I was in shock, completely numb. I went to a motel and tried to process what the fuck had just happened. My brother had told everyone I was dead. He had a funeral for me, while I was struggling to get home. The next few weeks were a blur. I found out Reed had not only reported me dead, but had submitted some kind of documentation to the probate court. He collected the entire inheritance, all of it, over $2.7 million plus their house and everything else. I tried calling him, but he blocked my number. I tried messaging him on Facebook, Instagram, everything, blocked everywhere. I tried emailing but got no response. I even went to his house, but he wasn't home or was pretending not to be. I talked to this lawyer who basically said proving I'm alive after being legally declared dead is complicated and expensive. And guess what? I have no access to money because all my accounts were closed after my death, and the small amount I had saved up went to Reed as part of the estate. The ultimate catch-22. I need money for legal help to prove I'm alive to get my money. I found out Reed told different stories about how I died to different people. He told our grandparents I died in a hiking accident, but I found this old high school friend on Facebook who went to my memorial service, and she said Reed gave this tearful speech about how I died saving a child from drowning in a river. Like he couldn't even keep his story straight. He just wanted the money. So for almost 3 years, I've been working shit jobs, saving up for legal help, trying to prove I'm alive, and getting absolutely nowhere. I'm not even angry at Reed anymore, just disappointed. Okay, that's a lie. I'm furious, but whatever. I've been staying with this guy I met at a bar who needed a roommate. My life is completely unrecognizable from what it was supposed to be. All because my brother is a greedy piece of shit who saw an opportunity when I was unreachable and took it. And then yesterday, I saw it. A wedding announcement in the local newspaper. Reed is getting married next month to some woman named Alexa. She's the daughter of this big local business guy. The wedding is at this fancy country club. This might be my only chance. My last chance to expose him in front of everyone. His new wife, her family, our grandparents, everyone who matters to him. A place where he can't just have me thrown out or ignored. I have a plan. I'm not going to say exactly what it is here, but I'm thinking about showing up at this wedding and finally making him face what he did. After everything he's put me through, am I wrong for wanting to crash his wedding? Edit, holy shit, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the awards and messages. To clarify a few things people keep asking. 1. Yes, I've tried going to the police. They basically treated me like I was running a scam. 2. Several people suggested DNA tests. Yes, I've thought of that. The problem is I need money for the tests and a lawyer to present them properly in court. 3. For those saying I'm making this up, I honestly wish I was. I know it sounds insane. 4. A lot of you are asking why Reed did this. I found out later he had some serious gambling debts before my parents died, and I think he saw an opportunity and took it. Number 5. To the people asking why I didn't just call from Nepal, I tried. My phone was stolen, internet was spotty at best, and when I finally got temporary documents and a cheap phone, no one would answer my calls because they all thought I was dead. Edit 2. A few more things since people keep asking the same questions. No, I haven't tried contacting Alexa yet. I don't know her at all, and I'm worried Reed has already told her some story about a mentally ill brother to preemptively discredit me. Yes, I've thought about just showing up at my grandparents' house again, but after that first attempt, they told their neighbor I was a disturbed man claiming to be Shane. The neighbor actually messaged me on Facebook to warn me to stay away or they'd call the cops. Some of you are suggesting I go to local news stations with my story. I might try that if the wedding plan doesn't work. Also, for those suggesting I just let it go and start a new life, would you just walk away from $1.3 million that's rightfully yours, that your parents wanted you to have, after your only brother betrayed you in the worst possible way? Yeah, didn't think so. Now for the first update, I honestly did not expect my last post to blow up like that. Thank you to everyone who messaged me support, advice, and even offers of help. So it's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and a lot has happened. The wedding is in 3 days, and I've been running around trying to get everything ready. I know a bunch of you thought I should just go to the police or get a lawyer, but like I said before, that stuff takes forever and costs money I don't have. But I think I've got something better now. After reading all your comments, I realized I needed actual proof before I showed up at this wedding. I couldn't just walk in there like, surprise, I'm alive, and expect everyone to believe me. So I've spent every waking minute tracking down people who could confirm I'm really Shane Marshall and not some random crazy person. First, I tried contacting some of our distant relatives, but most of them either didn't respond or were like, Reed already warned us about this scammer, which was infuriating because it means Reed has been actively working against me this whole time. He's obviously been telling people that some crazy guy might contact them claiming to be his dead brother. I managed to track down my high school girlfriend Gabby through Facebook. That was weird. She didn't believe it was me at first. I looked different now. Longer hair, beard, a lot more weathered from all the traveling. But then I reminded her about how we snuck onto the roof of her parents' garage that time to watch a meteor shower, and her dad caught us and thought we were burglars and almost called the cops. And I told her about the birthmark she has on her left shoulder that looks kind of like Australia. Things only I would know, you know. She was shocked and started crying on the phone. She's married now with twin boys and living in Chicago. It's so strange seeing someone you once thought you'd marry living this completely different life. That's not important to the story, sorry, just felt weird. Anyway, the real breakthrough came when I found my parents' old business partner, Travis. I remembered his name from when I was a kid, but had no idea if he was still around. Turns out he still lives in the same house, and when I showed up on his doorstep, he recognized me right away. Travis told me that Reed had been in gambling debt before our parents died. Reed had apparently approached Travis multiple times asking for loans that Travis refused. Travis said he always thought it was weird how quickly Reed got over my supposed death, especially since we were brothers and all. And he thought it was suspicious how Reed immediately started selling off parts of the business that weren't included in the original sale. Travis felt really bad about not questioning my death more, especially since Reed's story kept changing. He told my grandparents I died hiking, told some people I drowned saving a kid, told others I got sick with some tropical disease. The best part is Travis agreed to help me financially so I could hire a private investigator. The PI found out Reed paid off almost $800,000 in gambling debts within weeks of getting control of the inheritance money. $800,000. And the PI also discovered Reed had used contacts at the funeral home where my parents' services were held to forge documentation about my death. I also met with my parents' former attorney, Mrs. Chen. That meeting was intense. I was super nervous walking into her office because I wasn't sure if she'd recognize me or just call security. She froze when she saw me. I quickly explained who I was, and she just stared at me. Then she asked about the scar on my left eyebrow, how I got it. I told her it happened when Reed accidentally hit me with a baseball bat when I was 8. He claims it was an accident anyway. I've always had my doubts, lol. She pulled out this old family photo from her files and compared it to my face. Then she admitted she'd had suspicions about Reed's story, but didn't have any proof to challenge it legally. I showed her my new passport and the DNA test results I'd gotten, thanks to Travis helping with the cost, and she examined them carefully. Then she called her husband, who was my parents' accountant, and asked him to come to the office immediately. Mrs. Chen and her husband gave me copies of all the estate distribution documents and the forged death certificate Reed had submitted. Turns out Reed claimed I had no will or directive, which let him as next of kin inherit everything. What makes me even more angry is finding out my grandparents were seriously depressed after losing both me and my parents in the same year. And Reed used that to position himself as their primary emotional support while he was selling off everything from the estate. I've decided I'm going to the wedding reception, not the ceremony. I mean, I still have some decency. I don't want to completely ruin Alexa's special day. The ceremony is private anyway, but the reception is at this fancy country club with like 200 people. Reed obviously loves this woman if he's having such a big wedding, so I don't want to mess up their actual vows. Although honestly, she deserves to know what kind of man she's marrying before it's too late. I've been going back and forth about whether this plan is too cruel. Sometimes I'm absolutely certain this is what Reed deserves. And other times I'm like, am I taking this too far? But then I remember how I've spent 3 years working minimum wage jobs, struggling to even prove I'm alive, while he's been living it up with my money. Money our parents wanted me to have too. Travis and Mrs. Chen both said they'll back me up legally after this goes down. They've helped me put together this folder of evidence. Bank records, the forged death certificate, statements from them confirming the fraud, everything. I'm going to bring copies to the reception. I bought a suit specifically for this. It felt weird spending money on something like that when I've been so broke, but Travis insisted. Said I needed to look respectable when I showed up. It's nothing fancy, just a basic black suit from Men's Warehouse, but it's honestly the nicest thing I've owned in years. I'm staying at a hotel near the venue now. The wedding is this Saturday, 3 days from now. My plan is to position myself near the entrance to the ballroom and wait until Reed and Alexa are introduced as the newly married couple. My grandparents will be at the front table. I want everyone to see Reed's face when he realizes I'm there. I keep rehearsing what I'm going to say, but honestly, I have no idea how I'll actually react when I see him. Will I cry, yell, stay calm? I honestly don't know. I've gone over this plan so many times and I think it's solid, but I'm still nervous as hell. What if security throws me out before I can explain? What if no one believes me? What if Reed has some counter plan I haven't thought of? Part of me still can't believe my own brother would do this to me. Like, we weren't best friends as adults, but we were close as kids. I remember him teaching me how to ride a bike and defending me when neighborhood kids picked on me. How does someone go from that to declaring their brother dead for money? I keep trying to understand it, but I can't. Anyway, I'll update again after the wedding. Thanks for all the support on my last post. Wish me luck. Edit. A few people have asked why I don't just contact Alexa directly before the wedding. I considered it, but 1, I don't know her at all. 2, she might just think I'm crazy and warn Reed. 3, Reed has probably already told her about the disturbed man claiming to be his dead brother to get ahead of this. The element of surprise is kind of crucial here. Edit 2. Someone asked if I have any backup if Reed tries to have me physically removed. Yes, Travis will be there as a guest. He was invited since he was my parents' business partner for years. And Mrs. Chen's son is actually a cop who'll be nearby, not in uniform, just in case things get really out of hand. I'm not going in there completely alone. Edit 3. To the person who asked if I have proof Reed knew I was alive, yes. The PI found emails from Reed to the embassy in Nepal, basically confirming he knew I was trying to get home. He deliberately ignored my attempts to contact him while simultaneously telling everyone I was dead. That's in the evidence folder too. Edit 4. Some of you are saying I should forgive Reed and handle this privately. Would you forgive someone who erased your entire existence, stole millions from you, and let your grandparents grieve you unnecessarily for 3 years? I didn't think so. Now for the second update. So, the wedding. Where do I even start? I'll try to keep this somewhat chronological, but my brain is still all over the place about everything that went down. Sorry in advance if this is super long and rambly. I got to the country club super early, like 2 hours before the reception was supposed to start. I was so nervous I thought I was going to throw up. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and I kept second-guessing the whole plan. But then I'd remember how Reed literally stole my entire life, and I'd get angry all over again and recommit to the plan. I positioned myself near the entrance to the ballroom. The ceremony had already happened at some church. Wasn't invited, obviously, lol. And people were starting to arrive for the reception. I kept thinking someone was going to recognize me or call security or something. The reception started with the typical stuff. The wedding party entered, everyone clapped, they did their first dance, etc. Reed looked so normal, like he wasn't someone who had literally erased his brother's existence for money. He was smiling and laughing with his new wife. It made me so angry I almost walked right up to him right then, but I stuck to the plan. I waited until after dinner when Reed was making his rounds greeting guests. And then it happened. Reed saw me. I will never forget the look on his face. His champagne glass literally slipped out of his hand and shattered on the floor. Everyone around him turned to look, and then followed his gaze to me. The next few minutes are honestly a blur. Reed tried to play it cool at first, forcing this super fake laugh and acting like I was just some random wedding crasher. I just looked him right in the eyes and reminded him it had been about 3 years since we last saw each other. Reed basically lunged toward me and tried to grab my arm to pull me outside, but I sidestepped him. Thank you to the random Redditor who suggested I practice dodging moves, lol. He was trying to keep his voice down, but also loud enough for people nearby to hear, telling me I needed to leave right now and that I was delusional. His new wife Alexa came over looking confused and asked who I was. Reed immediately put his arm around her protectively and told her I was just some disturbed man who'd been harassing his family. He claimed I had delusions about being his dead brother and that security was coming to help me. This is where things get crazy. My grandparents were sitting at the front table, and my grandmother Marie heard the commotion and turned around. I'll never forget the look on her face, this mixture of confusion and shock, and then recognition. She got up really slowly and walked over, just staring at me. Reed was trying to block her, telling her to go back to her seat because I was just some disturbed man. But she pushed past him and reached up to touch the scar on my eyebrow, the one I got when Reed hit me with a baseball bat when we were kids. He said it was an accident, but I've always had my doubts. And then she just burst into tears and hugged me so tight, repeating my name over and over. My grandfather Johnny came over too, and he was more skeptical at first, but then he looked in my eyes and just knew. He started crying too and hugged me, and it was this really intense moment with everyone at the wedding just staring at us in shock. Reed changed tactics immediately. He started accusing me of abandoning the family for years and not even coming back for Mom and Dad's funeral. He claimed I was only showing up now because I wanted money. That's when I implemented the plan. I had this leather portfolio with all the documents. I handed packets to my grandparents, to Alexa and her parents, to Travis, my parents' business partner, who was helping me, and even gave one to the wedding photographer who started taking pictures of everything. Best decision ever, by the way. Each packet had the DNA test results confirming I'm Shane Marshall, my new passport, and documentation from the embassy about my stolen original documents, records of all the emails and messages I sent trying to contact family after our parents died, bank records showing Reed's gambling debts and subsequent payments using inheritance money, the forged death certificate Reed had submitted, statements from my parents, attorney and accountant confirming the fraud, a formal legal notice of my intent to reclaim my portion of the inheritance and pursue fraud charges. The entire room went dead silent as people started looking through the documents. Reed's face went from angry to panicked real quick. He tried grabbing the packet from Alexa, but she pulled away from him, reading everything with this horrified expression. Reed tried one last desperate move. He actually claimed I had threatened him, and that's why he declared me dead, to protect himself. But that's when Travis stood up and pointed to the emails in the packet, showing Reed had been planning this before our parents were even buried. He had been emailing a contact at the funeral home discussing how to create documentation of a death overseas while I was still struggling to get home from Nepal. Alexa just stared at the papers, then at Reed, then back at the papers. She took off her wedding ring, placed it on the table, and walked out. Her parents followed her after giving Reed the most disgusted look I've ever seen. The room erupted in whispers, and people started leaving. Reed completely broke down. He was sobbing and switching between blaming me for not coming home when our parents died and begging for forgiveness. He claimed it was just supposed to be a temporary solution until he paid off his gambling debts, but then he couldn't figure out how to undo it without going to jail. Security eventually escorted Reed out of his own wedding reception. My grandparents wouldn't let go of me. They kept touching my face and hair like they couldn't believe I was real. We all went back to their house that night, and I stayed in my old bedroom for the first time in almost 8 years. It was emotional, to say the least. So that's what happened at the wedding. The past 3 weeks have been a whirlwind of lawyers, paperwork, and emotional conversations. I'm working with attorneys to restore my legal status as alive and reclaim my portion of the inheritance. Reed is facing potential criminal charges for fraud and forgery, though I'm honestly conflicted about pressing charges against my only brother despite everything he did. Reed has checked himself into some gambling addiction treatment facility, which might be genuine or might be another manipulation tactic. I honestly don't know anymore. I want to believe he's getting help, but after everything that's happened, it's hard to trust anything he does. Alexa contacted me a week after the wedding. She apologized, which is crazy because she didn't do anything wrong, and asked me questions about Reed's character and our childhood. I think she's trying to decide whether to annul the marriage or attempt reconciliation. I tried to be honest without completely trashing Reed, but yeah, not sure what she'll decide. I've been reconnecting with old friends and rebuilding my relationship with my grandparents. They're dealing with a lot of guilt about believing Reed so easily. I keep telling them it's not their fault. Reed had proof I was dead, and they had no reason to doubt him, but they still feel terrible. I'm planning to use some of my reclaimed inheritance, once I actually get it, to establish a support organization for families dealing with identity theft and fraud. This whole experience has shown me how incredibly difficult it is to prove you're alive once you've been declared dead, and I want to help others who might face similar situations. The weirdest part of all this is that even though I've basically won, I've exposed Reed, I'm reconnecting with family, I'll eventually get my inheritance back, I still feel lost. I spent years traveling, then years just trying to prove I exist, and now I'm not sure where I belong or what I want to do with my life. I know I should just move on completely and never speak to Reed again. But part of me wonders if I should talk to him after he completes treatment. Some betrayals might just be unforgivable, though. I check his social media daily. He hasn't posted since the wedding and still feel a surge of anger each time I see his face. Is that normal? I don't know. Sorry for the super long post. This whole situation has been insane from start to finish. Thanks again for all your support through this crazy journey. Edit. Holy shit, this blew up again. Thanks for all the awards and messages. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, we're pursuing legal action. The prosecutors are still deciding whether to bring criminal charges against Reed. That's partially up to me, and I'm still conflicted about it. 2. Several people asked if Alexa knew about Reed's gambling. According to her, she had no idea. She thought his family had money from the construction company's sale, which is technically true, just not in the way she thought. 3. For those asking if I'm in contact with Reed now, no, I'm not. His treatment facility doesn't allow phones visitors for the first 60 days anyway. 4. To the people suggesting I forgive Reed for my own peace, I get where you're coming from, but he literally erased my existence for 3 years. That's not exactly a small thing to forgive. Number 5. Yes, I have the wedding photos. The photographer actually contacted me and sent me all the pictures of the confrontation. Reed's face when he first saw me is basically my new phone background, lol. Okay, not really, but tempting. Edit 2. Some more answers. No, I haven't decided whether to press full charges yet. My lawyers say I have a solid case for fraud, identity theft, and a bunch of other charges that could put Reed away for years. But he's still my brother, and despite everything, I don't know if I want him to go to prison. Yes, my grandparents are doing better now. They're seeing a therapist to deal with the trauma of thinking I was dead for 3 years and then finding out their other grandson lied to them. It's a lot. Some of you are suggesting I write a book about this experience. Maybe someday, but right now I'm just trying to get my life back on track. Also, for those curious about the money, we're still working through the legal process, but it looks like I'll eventually get around $1.3 million, half of what my parents got for the business, plus some other assets, minus what Reed has already spent. It's surreal to think about having that kind of money after struggling for so long. Edit 3. To clarify about Reed's treatment, it's supposedly a 90-day inpatient program for gambling addiction. I found out he checked himself in the day after the wedding. Part of me thinks it's just to look good for the court, but another part hopes he's actually getting help. People with gambling addiction can do desperate things, though that's not an excuse for what he did to me. Also, I'm not living with my grandparents permanently. I'm staying in their guest room until I figure out my next steps. They've offered to let me stay as long as I need, but I'll probably get my own place once the legal stuff is sorted and I have access to funds.